So hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, I'm Shakia and I am the founder of Circle. In today's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience and what to expect from a DONA International Childbirth Doula training. For those of you who don't know, I was trained through DONA in June of 2016. And this video is just going to be about DONA because that's who I trained by. But I do want to just put this disclaimer that each teacher is different. So what you learn overall is the same, the material is the same, their methods of teaching is different, their pricing is different, and where their workshop is located is different. So I wanted to do the doula training because my ultimate goal is to become a midwife. When I wanted to do the doula training, I had no idea about all that goes into being a doula. Honestly, I thought I was going to take the training and I thought that I was going to come out of the training and be ready to charge what doulas in my area charge for births. I was absolutely wrong. So if that's what you think, you're absolutely wrong. But now looking back, now looking at it from full perspective, like I said, I found this Circle and I want to build Circle up from me being a doula to me being a home birth midwife. So I eventually want Circle to be your one-stop shop for all of your maternal needs as far as pregnancy, all the way through delivery and postpartum care. So if you see me looking away, I just wrote a guideline. So that's what I am looking at. So let's just go into it. I chose to train with DONA in June 2016 because when I Googled about becoming a doula, DONA was the main website that continuously popped up. In this area, I knew of one doula before I actually trained, and she went through DONA and she highly recommended DONA. So that's where I went through, and that was the only option. Honestly, I didn't look into any other organization, so that was a mistake on my part. If you have not been trained yet, it's important that you do your research on your organization and go through an agency that fits your needs as well as your values and your potential clients' values. So look at who your target population is and go through an organization that targets them as far as being able to relate to them and help them. For those of you who don't know, I do plan on getting trained and certified through Mama Glow as well as soon as I complete this DONA training, this DONA certification. And I'm only doing this DONA certification because I've already trained with DONA, so I don't see the point of training and not becoming certified, especially because I already bought my packet, and then I'll go and train with Mama Glow because Mama Glow more so conveys or targets my target population as far as the group of people that I want to work with. So like I said, when you go on the website, you're going to go on DONA's website, and what you're going to do is you're going to look at how to become a doula. You're going to click on that, and then you'll click on like find a workshop. The workshops will be listed. What you'll do is you'll just put in your area code, and all the workshops in your area will come up. There are people who are certified in teaching childbirth workshops for DONA. So only these people can teach DONA approved childbirth doula workshops. So what you'll do is you'll just select one of those dates, and the dates will vary based off of when the instructor is available, and then the price will vary off of that. So you can do multiple workshops. The one I chose to do is I chose to do the three-day 12-hour workshop. So I did Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for 12 hours. And I paid $475 for it. Looking back, I don't think $475 was too steep. At the time, I thought like, oh wow, this is like really an investment, and it was. But looking back at it, $475 wasn't too bad, especially for like what doula workshops are going for now. It wasn't too bad, so I would gladly pay $475 again to do a workshop. So before you'll sign up, you'll email that instructor like, hey, I want to get on your list. That instructor may have a cutoff as far as how many people they accept for that workshop. And then once you email them, they'll respond to you about like how much the deposit is and when your payments are due. Your payments have to be paid, your workshop has to be paid in full by the time the actual training starts. So the day of your training, your workshop has to be paid in full. The only requirement before you attend the training is that your workshop is paid in full and that you have to read the Birth Partners book. For those of you who have not read the Birth Partners book, I highly recommend the book on all levels. It's just a basic guide of childbirth, and it'll give you basic information for you to take into the training. I say definitely read it. Not only is it a requirement, but you can ask questions off that book to your instructor, who's 9 times out of 10 been practicing as a doula for a very long time. You can ask questions then. So I'll do a whole book review on the Birth Partners in another video, but for now I highly recommend the book. Okay, so let's start off. Day 1, I got there at 8 o'clock. When I walked in, it was like you could smell like the lavender in the room. It was about, I think it was 10 women in my group, and we were all different ages. So at the time I was like 21, 22 when I did it. We had women who were like freshmen and sophomores in college, all the way up to like mid-30s, early 40s. So our group was very wide range. Some of us had children, other of us didn't have children. So like we were very new to this. But most important, all of us found out just being like wanting to do this for real. Some of us wanted to actually become trained so that we can practice as a doula independently, meaning have our own company that we practice as a doula by. Others just wanted to become a doula because they were in nursing school and it looked good. Here in this area, we have a lot of hospitals that offer volunteer work, so they either wanted to do volunteer work at the hospital, and it's easier to get in if you're already trained over there. So various reasons why we wanted to become doulas. What I will say is, for the people who had children, most of them said they wanted to become a doula because either they had a positive experience with a doula and they couldn't imagine childbirth without a doula, and then others said that they had a negative pregnancy or a negative labor experience, and so they wanted to become a doula in order to help women not have that same experience. So after we went around the room, it was, and it was very like open, non-formal. We literally like sat on the chairs, our feet are in the chairs, like we're just chilling. If you have a question, you just like kind of like interrupt then and like, hey, I got a question about this, or what you mean about that type thing. It was very informal, but it was very nice as well because it was so long and we were comfortable in there. So I'm gonna go over some of the stuff that we talked about on day 1. And I did this just by looking at my schedule pretty much. So we talked about the female anatomy and terminology. You'll be surprised how many people want to become doulas and they don't know the basic female organs or the reproductive system of a woman. So we talked about the functions of like the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, the uterus, things of that nature, and how they all play a part. We talked about terminology. So while the placenta is known as the afterbirth, a lot of people don't know, a lot of people forget about the placenta, let's just put it like that. So we talked about things of that nature, and a lot of these words have different have the same meaning, but we use various words to represent them. We talked about the fear, effect, and mind over matter. That was one of my favorite topics on day 1 because a lot of people go into labor afraid, and more than likely they're afraid of pain. So we talked about mind over matter and how what you put your mind to is what happens. What you think is what happens eventually, okay? So it's important as a doula, I'm not gonna say distract, but you kind of want to get them off of the pain aspect. You have to get them around the pain aspect. So one of my favorite things to do as a practicing doula now is to get her on the birth ball and have her move around in the shape of an 8. Because if she's practicing so hard to maintain the shape of an 8 as she's bouncing around, she forgets all about that pain because her mind is someplace else. So that's my favorite thing. If you are at a birth and your mom is just focusing on the pain, you should actually get her on the birth ball if possible. If she hasn't had the epidural and she can stay out the bed for a little bit, get her on the birth ball and have her move around in the shape of an 8, and tell her like you're moving around in the shape of an 8. When you first start, you want to get behind her and you want to guide her, but eventually you want to slowly let her go and let her maintain keeping that shape of an 8 going. So she's literally just rolling her hips in the shape of an 8, but she's not focusing on the pain at all. And then we talked about letting the mom live in the moment. So the mom needs to be in the moment. She can't say, oh, this is now, but right now I'm not feeling anything, but I know the pain is coming. She has to be in that moment. She has to experience that moment. So you don't want a nurse to come in and interrupt your moment. You don't want the husband to come in and interrupt your moment. If a nurse has to come in to like change the heart monitor, she has to wait until your client finishes that contraction, things like that. The fear effect is so big. So that was one of the big things that I liked talking about. Of course, we talked about the stages of labor and how to break down labor, how to tell when your client is in active labor, what to expect, and comfort measures to use with each stage of labor. That's just basic stuff that you can really Google. But then the birth partners book goes into great detail about the stages of labor, and the stages of labor play an important role when you're actually experiencing birth, but also when you're doing your certification packet, because you have to be there during all of active labor. And so you'll know what active labor is, and you actually have to document active labor. So you'll know things like that. We talked about interventions, and we talked about the beginning steps of postpartum and the intro to breastfeeding on the first day. So like I said, my favorite thing to talk about on day one was just the fear effect and the mind over matter. Because I also often feel like the stuff that I teach as a doula, I can apply to my everyday life. So it's like, here, like you tell your clients this stuff and you don't even apply it to yourself. So it's like, I have to apply what I'm telling my clients, a mind over matter, and getting out of the fear effect to my personal life. And I think that's really why I liked that. So like I said, it was a 12-hour day. We took various breaks throughout the day. So if you just need to step out, get some water, get some juice, we had snacks. Of course, we ordered in lunch, things of that nature. All of that was included in that $475, so we didn't have to pay extra for that. But if you just need to step out or whatever, you were able to do that. The first day, I would say, it went by kind of fast because everybody was so excited about it. So we left, we came back 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. Wait, let me go back. The first day was just the childbirth education portion. So like I said, I chose a 3-day class because in undergrad I had to do the shadow, and I went to Wake County Health and Human Services where I did the free childbirth training. And of course I was not pregnant when I did it. So it technically could have counted if I would have had it documented, but I didn't have it documented. So I needed to take that class in order to have it count towards my certification. So that's why I chose to do the childbirth education portion through DONA. In this way, you just get a certificate printed off, like, hey, she attended the childbirth doula training. And it has to be at least 12 hours, the 12-hour childbirth doula training. And then you'll print that off and you'll send that in with your packet because that counts towards your certification. You have to have that in order to be certified. So day 2 was our day 2, but technically it was day 1 of the actual doula training. I would say we were all a little bit more comfortable when we walked in. A lot of us had more questions than we had the day prior, just because on day 1 she gave us like a folder to look through, and so a lot of us had looked through that folder. So we came in with questions. When we first got there, we had breakfast. We asked questions. She answered our questions, things of that nature. I mean, it was chill, I guess. And so in day 2, we talked about the significance of birth and what it means to a new mom. Okay, so that was my favorite thing of the day. Again, that was the significance of birth and understanding what birth means to a new mom. So from what I got, so for those of you who don't know, I'm very passionate about birth. I don't know why, but I've always been like this. Like, birth is just so amazing to me. Like, what the female body is capable of doing is just absolutely amazing to me. It's no other words to put it, but it's amazing. So the reason that this was my favorite thing is because it taught us that not every mom has the same, I guess, views on birth. So while like for some moms, they are super happy that they're pregnant and they're super happy that their baby is coming, their baby is growing, the day of delivery, they're super excited to meet their baby, but not everyone thinks like that. So you also have, on the other end of the spectrum, someone who is not excited about a birth, or maybe this pregnancy was not planned, or maybe they're going through a divorce, or maybe they were raped and this is a result of that rape. You never know. And so this was important for me because I was looking at it before this training. It's like everybody's so happy to deliver, and that's not necessarily the case. So that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about this session, is just learning from someone else's mindset. And then it's also important to remember that you have to meet that mom where she is. So if that mom is not happy about this birth, while it's nothing you can do now because this baby is gonna come, you have to acknowledge that. Like, you have to acknowledge that that she isn't happy about this birth, and you have to meet her where she is. We talked about the scope of practice. So a lot of doulas get in trouble. We spend a great deal on this. A lot of doulas get in trouble just because they do things outside the scope of practice. And I'm gonna just be honest, as a doula, sometimes you do something outside your scope of practice and it's not intentional. It's not to harm anybody or anything like this, but it's important to stay within your scope of practice. You can Google scopes of practice as far as doulas, but you want to make sure that you're maintaining your scope of practice, just because a lot of doulas are banned from hospitals because they have went outside their scope of practice for various reasons. A lot of women are sued because they have went outside their scope of practice and it caused harm to a woman or her baby. So you just want to make sure that you are staying in your scope of practice. For myself, I went outside my scope of practice one time, and the nurse didn't say anything to me in front of my client, and she didn't write it on my certification paperwork, but she wrote me like a little sticky when I went back to get the certification paperwork, and she was like, hey, just make sure that you stay within your scope of practice. And what I did was, you know, when you go into the hospital, typically women are hooked up to the IVs, and once that IV fluid is done, the machine will beep, and it's literally a button that you press that says silence. And I silenced the machine. While I silenced the machine in the room, the nurse's station still gets the beeping or whatever. And right after I silenced it, I did go out there and tell her, like, hey, I silenced it, because my client was trying to sleep and that thing is loud. And she didn't say anything. She was like, okay, thank you, I'm coming. And then, like, she wrote it on there, but that's not my scope of practice, because my scope of practice is not to mess with any medical equipment. So that's an example of how you can literally just be trying to help your client by silencing it so it doesn't wake her up, but that's not your scope of practice. So in the future, I have to always remember, like, just go get the nurse, hurry up, and let the nurse come in and silence it or change the fluid out. Things of that nature. Also, you will have a client that's going to tell you, like, it's going to ask you, like, about home remedies and medication. Refer them. You can give them, like, information, but do not give them advice. Refer them to their physician for that thing, for those types of things. Hey, my baby is having gas. What should I do? You need to talk to your physician about that, okay? A lot of women talk about home remedies and stuff that their great-grandmas used to do. Refer to your physician. All right, so after we finished talking about the scope of practice, we started talking about prenatal contact between the client and a doula, communication skills, providing emotional support. Providing emotional support went into how to support women with epidurals. I'm gonna just be honest with you. Before I actually became a doula, and even after I became a doula for a while, I was strongly against epidurals, and it was my personal opinion and how I pictured birth for myself. Being 3 years in the game now, I do see where an epidural can be helpful. So I no longer like judge women who have an epidural, or if a client tells me that she wants an epidural, when that client tells me, I go ahead and acknowledge that she does want an epidural. I don't know where this whole thing came from, but we publicly judge women who want epidurals, and I just feel like that's not our job as a doula. Women are judged a lot by, like, their families for getting epidurals. Way back when women did not get epidurals during birth, and because now, like, it's kind of the norm is to get an epidural, they have their mothers in the room, they have their grandmothers in the room, and all of them are shaming them. They don't need us to shame them as well. Our job is just to support them, whatever their choices are during birth. So we tell them the pros and the cons, and ultimately it's up to them whether or not they want an epidural. So we talked about how to support women with epidurals and doing some stuff in the bed, like some different movements and positioning in the bed that they can do, since after they have the epidural, you know, they are bed confined. And that was just it for day 2. Day 3, of course, we opened it out with more questions. On day 2, a lot of us had questions about the scope of practice and maintaining our scope of practice, because I think like once we kind of realized how many people were like getting sued and getting banned from hospitals, it kind of just became a fear for us. So we did a lot more, and we did an exercise as well about maintaining your scope of practice, and that's actually in a DONA workshop manual that you'll get. It's just a manual that you get whenever you go through DONA. It's like a scope of practice worksheet that we also did. So day 3, we talked about the DONA standards. The DONA standards, you'll learn all about it in your workshop, and that's just holding yourself up to the DONA standard, what DONA thinks a doula should be. And that's exactly why you want to make sure that whatever organization or agency you go through, they represent what you represent. Just because your job is to hold yourself up to that standard. We also talked about the certification process. Y'all, I'm gonna do a whole video on the certification process, I promise. So I always say drop your comments down below, but people always inbox me on social media, primarily Instagram for some reason, asking me questions, and all of the questions are always about the certification process. So I'm going to do a whole video about the certification process, and I try to answer every question, whether you drop it here, you drop it on social media, wherever you ask me, I try to answer your question. So yeah, I don't mind answering your questions, but I'm going to do a whole video about the certification process, including the certification manual. We talked about challenging labors. My favorite part of day 3 was doing comfort measures and positionings, and we got to practice on each other. So one of us would pretend like we were a mother in labor, and the other of us would pretend like we were the doula. So we got to practice like our double hip squeeze, different massages, different techniques, positioning, things of that nature. We got to practice. That was my favorite thing. We talked about cesarean births and VBAC support. For those of you who don't know, a cesarean is obviously a C-section. A VBAC happens when a mother had a C-section and her next birth she wants to give vaginally. So in this area, VBACs are pretty common. And so supporting someone who has had a VBAC. VBACs are typically considered high risk. And so people who have a VBAC typically have to go to a hospital and have to get a doctor that agrees to do a VBAC for them. Because like I said, at one point when you had a cesarean, you knew every birth after that had to be a cesarean, but now you're able to deliver vaginally, or some doctors support you more than others delivering vaginally. We talked about newborn support, and again we talked about the introduction to breastfeeding. If you plan to certify, you do have to go through an introduction of breastfeeding course so that you can know a little bit about breastfeeding. We also talked about how medicines used to comfort you or even to prevent illness during labor, how they can affect your baby and your baby's ability to come out automatically latching on, things of that nature. And then we talked about the postpartum visit. So, what would I rate DONA? My workshop. In all fairness, this was my teacher's first time teaching this workshop. I would rate DONA a 6. And I'm going to tell you why. I just felt like it was things that were missing. Of course, my expectations were high. And my expectations, some of them were non-realistic, were just not realistic, including me wanting to be able to go to a workshop and spend 36 hours and come out and just know it all. So that wasn't realistic, but I do feel like the workshop should have went into more things. I felt like the workshop should have gave us more in-depth look on the importance of networking with other doulas in our area, the importance of building relationships with both midwives, OB, office staff, all of that kind of stuff. I felt like in this country, even then, the opioid epidemic and working with women who are addicts or recovering addicts should have been mentioned. Just to see women who are recovering addicts, sometimes a needle, just looking at that needle is enough to throw them off the edge, you know, to make them uncomfortable. So dealing with women like that, I felt like should have been discussed. Starting this as a business, you'll see that you have to register your stuff as a business, and we did not go into the business aspect at all. We didn't talk about how to gather up clients, especially as a new doula, and promoting yourself. I just felt like a lot of things were missing. We didn't go into how to work with women who have been sexually assaulted and how to support them during birth when they're being touched in places by strangers that they may not want to be touched in. We didn't discuss any of that kind of stuff, and I felt like that is just some stuff that like should have been discussed. I felt like, I don't want to call it common sense stuff, but my background in public health education, I felt like a lot of the stuff that we discussed kind of to me was common sense stuff. Of course, I had a few things that were my favorites that I really enjoyed talking about, but for the most part, I mean, I didn't really